songs ever, and the rest of it just mediocre. So, also really quick on Promised Neverland while I'm here, I'm going to disagree with what you said earlier, to where you weren't looking at Attack on Titan like a horror show. It just had horror elements. I think Attack on Titan just objectively, it just is in the horror genre. So regardless if you look at it as a horror anime or not, it's fine to say you're looking at it from a mystery perspective. But I think it just objectively is a horror anime. I'm bringing that up because with The Promised Neverland, I don't look at it as a horror anime, but I still think it just objectively is, regardless of if I think it is or not.
I can see how you can say that. And I would say that the difference would be in the way that they show certain information. So for Attack on Titan, it's more just a lot of fear of being squashed because it's dangerous. But the horror for, I'd say, The Promised Neverland is more that they are powerless children in the situation of supernatural beings. So they can both be seen as horror. Though honestly, I would say
You kind of say
I
the
see
same
The
for Attack
Promised
on Titan,
Neverland more
though.
as horror because
It
on
is
Attack on Titan, they
depiction.
have agency to fight back, whereas in The Promised Neverland, they really don't have that agency,
But their
which
agency
is
is
the
stripped
biggest
away
issue.
from them in Attack on Titan.
They have the agency and the capability of fighting back, which is not something they had in The Promised Neverland.
You're looking at
Now, at
humanity
first, you
as
don't
a
have that.
whole. When you look at the individuals, they're dying left and right, going down like flies.
Of course.
Yes, their agency
Oh,
is
I
taken away
don't
from
say
them.
that they have a
That's the
they don't have a
focus.
high success rate, but they have a capability of fighting back, which is something in a true horror you don't have. There is no really fighting back in a horror movie against a Michael Myers or a Jason. It's about survival and just escaping, whereas they actively train to kill them on a regular basis, and they learn how to do so. Unfortunately, they just normally aren't in the best position to be able to do so. But they even learn how to do so when they aren't things around for them to basically grapple to. They grapple to the Titans and just kill them instantly, which is really fun in the video game.
Yeah, I would say
Hard to do, but really fun.
I wouldn't necessarily go that route. Those are two examples, but I say those. I don't know if there are exceptions to the rule, but at the very least, the rule isn't set in place to where there's just no escape whatsoever. Like Saw is in the horror
Mm-hmm.
genre. There is a clear objective from
Yeah.
the get go. You follow the rules, you'll survive. In Texas Chainsaw
Mm-hmm.
Massacre, you literally run away. They survive at the end, based on that, the first movie. And Friday the 13th, I forget the original name of it, but whatever it is, I think it is Friday the 13th, the original one,
Yeah.
to where the mom is trying to get revenge. You chainsaw her head off, you beat the horror villain, you won. There's still horror things that happen
That's
afterwards,
true.
but there's a win con. Kill her, you win. With the two movies you listed, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there is no win con per se, but it's almost like Final Destination, to where there is an end objective in sight, whether they reach it or not. There is a way to
I
win,
can see
otherwise
that.
there's no conflict. There's no obstacle for
Well,
the main characters to overcome or fail to overcome.
that's the goal of it being horror, is it's just a survival for the most part. The whole goal is to survive whatever
But
ridiculous
exactly,
circumstance you're put in.
it is a goal,
Mhm.
regardless if they achieve it or not. That is a goal. And
Yeah,
it's not just for the audience or for the characters. The audience has to feel that goal is obtainable as well for it to count.
of course.
Yeah,
That's why it's the whole survival idea. It's against the odds, but it's
exactly.
just like a Quiet Place, which is probably my favorite horror movie.
Mm.
The whole movie is them just trying to survive. The
Okay.
idea that they do find a way to fight back later is great, but the goal is never to fight. The goal is simply to escape and survive. That's it.
Yeah.
Which certain situations they add more agency where you can fight back. And to me, in it's kind of like horror games where like a dead space where you can fight and shoot and all that. To
Yeah.
me, it's not horror if you can fight back. The horror games that I would see are the ones where there is no capable way of you fighting back. The goal is for you to escape and survive. If you can fight back, now it's a type of combat simulation. That's not the same as horror, because
Well,
a
The
true
Promised
horror story,
Neverland with the
you
manga
don't
does the
have the
same thing.
capability of fighting.
Even season 2
That's
does the
what the
same thing.
manga, which isn't too bad to say that. Well, season 2 of The Promised Neverland is, we don't talk about season 2. It's like Bruno. It doesn't exist. It
Well,
never
even
happened.
then, I
It
wouldn't.
never
Okay,
ever happened.
I think I know what you're trying to say. I wouldn't word in the same way because I feel like that doesn't even necessarily count either. The children can fight back. They think they're going to lose, but they consider the possibility and they don't know. Even then, they do try to fight back against the mom physically, and it doesn't work out for them at that point in time, but they could do that at any point. In fact, they're like discussing other things. Like, we can just poison the mom at any time. but who knows what's
Right.
going to happen at that point, and so they don't do it. So I think the
Mhm.
better way of looking at it is not that they don't have the agency or ability to fight back, because I mean the whole time they're technically fighting back in secret, but
Mhm.
the way to explain what you're trying to get at is comparing Attack on Titan and Dead Space to something like The Promised Neverland is entirely in how the horror is depicted, which is what your original point was. It's about whether or not it's tension versus execution, which is basically gore. So like Dead Space and Attack
Mhm.
on Titan, it's slowing down to show you people offing themselves. Or Dead Space, you're shooting these necromorphs, you're stomping to dismember their limbs. Whereas something in even Death Note does this well. The tension. It's what could be. They're discussing what might happen or the worst case scenario if this does happen. It's like going beyond your imagination because it's not showing it, but you know it's possible. I feel like that's the difference between the two.
I would say that's a fairly fair comparison. Not so much that they can't fight back, but it's the idea that fighting back doesn't mean that you're going to win. It's almost an instant way to lose, which, as
Yeah.
they fully understood for some reason in The Promised Neverland, but she let her emotions get the better of her. And then she got snapped like a twig. And it's like, oh, that's why you never tried that, because that clearly would be a bad idea and doesn't work at all, which is still one of my favorite single seasons, easily in my top 5 of a single season. And there's no other season after that, people. That's what happened. It ended right there in the anime. That's all they did. It was one season,
Yeah.
12 episodes.
Now, I
It's
will
great.
say, just nitpicking that slightly, I hate to nitpick it, but I kind of disagree with the
Nitpick.
wording, even though I agree with the idea. It's not that Emma knew she was gonna fail. Like, as far as she knew, she was just gonna physically defeat the. It's possible. It's not like they discussed it was never even in the realm of possibility that they could just overpower her. Yeah, but yeah, that's that's.
Uh, I mean, to a
Also,
degree, it was
Emma
already
wasn't
established well before that the mother, along with any other nanny, was always extremely far more physically
capable.
capable than they were
Yeah. I wouldn't say
in every
physically
regard.
capable, just capable in general,
Uh,
based on I'm sure you're talking
it-
about like the hide and seek game. But
Ideally, the hide and seek game, but just about any physical way that they could show that they
that's fine.
were
That's fine.
basically outclassed,
Yeah.
they did that for the kids, which could have been just them being kids and not being able to do it because as adults they might be comparable. But any 10, 12, 13-year-old children versus what I would assume is highly trained,
In
skilled
real life,
martial
not
arts
in
adults as
anime.
they
Yeah.
were, are
It's
like the
grounded still.
comparison between their abilities is just going to be tough for them to overcome. It's not
My
impossible, but it's going to be
I agree.
unrealistic
It's an
that that
uphill
would be the
battle.
thing that would normally happen.
But this is a shonen to where it's almost expected based on the cliche of the genre. I will say the hide and seek game, just to disagree with that slightly, is the fact that that
Mhm,
was more so about the younger children being incapable than it was
mhm.
about our protagonists being incapable. They were capable. In fact, they defeated the mother in
Mhm.
that game, even if they're more physically demanding or challenge what capable than the kids. The kids still came out on top in that game. So I feel like
V
that's showing it's
they
possible.
did learn to do so eventually, which was a great training way, is that they learned how to use their minds, their biggest weapon,
Exactly.
instead of trying to just physically trying to be better than them. Because in a way, they couldn't do
Yeah.
so with the handicap of having everybody they had and out physically run grown ass, full world-class athlete women, apparently. So they found a better way to make things work, which is a good way to do it,
But again,
which
this
is one
sort
of
of
the
goes
reasons why I
back
like it.
to My Hero Academia. They always had the intention, the willpower, even the mental resolve to do something, but they still need the physical aspect there. Their greatest weapon is their minds, but if their body isn't capable of performing what their mind wants to do, it's irrelevant. So they did have to have both aspects, even if one aspect is far greater than the other.
Yeah, they have. Well, I mean, that's the whole point of the academia is to train the body and the mind so you are
Yeah.
capable. Or at least that's the way that
Deku's
my
mind was already
campaign based
there,
on it
but
is also run, is that you have to,
yeah.
while some people are better than others, you need all of that combined together, along with the capability of having the right type of critical thinking skills, which is a hilarious class to have my people take because they always fail at it every time and they never stop learning, but they try is about being a full, complete, finished version of what you want to be versus stumbling along the way and trying to figure it out,
Yeah.
which is what I like the growth. But I also like any story